My name's Tony Bogan, and you are here for the next hour of basically basic Apple II repair and restoration. The idea behind this class was, and unfortunately I have a couple people have no clue about Apple II. Some guys said, oh yeah, I used to use them years ago, and some people that actually are familiar with them and use them to this day and play with them like I do. The idea behind this class was when I first got back into my machine, which was just about 6 years ago, pulled my original machines out of storage, show my kids the stuff I used to play with and the things they hear me telling stories about. And then I started looking into, does anybody still do anything with these old machines? And that's how I found out about this place, that was when I joined the Vintage Computer Federation, still called March back then. But the downside for a lot of people when they get stuff, as I started to meet other people, still do the Trent Computer Festival. I didn't even know it still existed. I used to go to it when I was a kid. Yeah, it's still there. It's still going. It's a shadow of its former self.
It's a little different than the 8 acres it used to be.
Right, but nevertheless, it's still going. So yeah, things like that. And one of the things I found from people, and I was the same way with a couple things. Fortunately, I had saved a lot of stuff, and a vast majority of my disks still worked. But there's nothing worse than getting a new toy and you can't do anything with it. So you got this computer. You don't have a disk drive, or you have a disk drive but you don't have any disks. Or you have disks and a disk drive, but the disk drive doesn't work. What do you do with it? What do you plug it into? What is it going to hook up? And of course, depending on the machine, that can vary greatly. As Adam and I have been dealing with getting all these different machines to have monitors that actually work with them. Is it an RF adapter? Is it composite? What the hell type of connection is it? So one of the things that I'm going to do before you guys leave is make sure you grab one. Is I took just little 1 gig flash drives, and I put a bunch of resources on there, PDF versions of all of the books that you would have gotten with an Apple II or II Plus, so you don't have to hunt them down. There's also a PDF on there with clickable links of all of the different websites that I go to when I'm looking for stuff. In addition to that, there's also a list of a handful of places that are currently making new products for the Apple II line. There's disk drive emulators. Oh my gosh, there's got to be at least half a dozen different, most of them SD card based disk drive emulators and hard drive emulators too, that plug right into machines. The thing that's nice about them is some of them are card based, so, and I'll show this to you in a few, just like an expansion card that you would have put in here to control a hard drive or floppy drive, they plug right into it. Others have cables that plug into the existing disk tube controllers or the 5¼ inch controller card, so whatever controller card you use to control a real disk drive back in the day will drive a lot of these emulators as well. That's how they're designed. There's modern power supplies. There's modern, what was I thinking of? Video cards. There's pretty much almost anything you can think of. Somebody's making stuff for it right now. So there's a lot of really cool new stuff that you can buy to keep the machine going. Because let's face it, I thought it was great that of the over 500 disks I had in storage for just under 30 years, about 80% of them still worked right out of the box. About another 10% I was able to salvage most, if not everything, off of them, and the other 10% are just dead. Ultramagnetics, don't ever buy ultramagnetics. I bought them back in the day by the ton because they were cheap. They were cheap. So you get nothing from them. 3M, verbatim, best discs ever. I still use my original discs from almost 4 years ago on a regular basis. Best discs ever. Elephants, they do forget. Well, that was their motto. They forget, trust me. So at any rate, I have some stuff up here for some links that, again, these are all clickable links that you can open the PDF and check it out. And then I have a bunch of the stuff that I use for doing my cleaning and restoration, and links for most of them. Some of the stuff is pretty obvious, of the ones that I use or a sample of the ones that I use. So if you go, what the heck was that fiberglass pencil? Yeah, it's right there. You can click on the link and at least get it. Even if you don't buy that one, you get an example of it. So when you first get an Apple II, the first thing you're going to see is it's going to be loaded with dirt and dust, just like most of the computers we find. And it's actually a lot easier to clean these machines than you might think. I'm trying to stay in front of that camera, by the way, because I like to wander. There's not a lot to it, especially if you go anything from the original Apple II, the Apple II Plus, and the early Apple IIes are all a painted case. So they're a lot easier to clean. They also don't yellow. If any of you are familiar with any kind of retro hobby involving plastic, they yellow over time. All those the ABS plastics, that's where Retro Bright came from. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of Retro Bright. If you haven't, it's just a way to try and brighten the plastics back clean because unless the paint is physically scratched, almost anything will come off of it with the right clean. So some of the stuff you'll see in the PDF I have links. There's a great thing called Bogan, not goof off. If you've ever tried it, you'll know. If you haven't tried it, do not use goof off on plastics unless you like to watch how quickly plastics melt. So don't do that. Bogan is a citrus-based cleaner. And it's real good for getting those tapes. Everybody always puts, I put stickers on my machines back when I was a kid. But boy, are they a bitch to get off 35, 40 years later. And the Bogan works really well. But the things that I use the most, the absolute most, and in a few minutes I'm going to pass this case around to you. I cleaned half of it last night. I spent 13 minutes on it. The other half I left original. I've never cleaned half a keyboard before, but it was kind of interesting to try. How's it going, man? I'm sorry you missed everything. You'll have to leave that. In 13 minutes, I did what you'll see on this. Obviously, if I spent a lot more time, I could do a better job. And all I used was alcohol swabs, Windex, paper towels, and a paintbrush. That's another thing too. Paintbrushes are great. Make sure the shines bristle. They won't create any static when you're sweeping off your motherboard. You gotta watch out for that. And the keyboards. People love to take, compressed air is great. Obviously, I'm sure you know, if you hold it upside down or sideways, you get all the moisture out of it. Yeah, no, it doesn't work well. But you gotta watch the keyboards, because the older the keyboard, a lot of keyboards, especially the early Apple II keyboards, had the encoder chip right on the keyboard. So any static electricity that touched anything near the keyboard, yeah, your keyboard was running. The encoder chips were notorious. That's why Apple switched away from it early in the production of the Apple II Plus, and they went to a keyboard like this with an encoder board that was separate and attached to it, and they put the encoder chip on there so you didn't fry your encoder chip every time it was winter and you walked across the carpet, like everybody did, and zapped your keyboard. I've done it recently too, by the way. Yeah, anything you can think of that you might have broken in the past, I've broken it in the recent times. It's one of those things. So that was kind of my thought process, was show you guys the stuff that I figured out over these last few years of how to restore them, how to clean them, which is one of the first things, how to get stuff working. No oscilloscopes, no multimeters. I wasn't going there, especially because I'm not that great with that stuff. This was the basic. I just got one. What the hell do I do with it? A number 2 Phillips screwdriver is all you need to take this machine apart. The beauty of the Apple IIs was they were designed to be opened up, taken apart, and expanded. Last year, my exhibit at VCF was the expandable Apple. And I had about 15, 16 machines set up to show just how many different kinds of expansions you could do. There were thousands of expansion cards to do all kinds of things. I had one machine that was running 3 different processors that could run 4 different operating systems. That was kind of the thought process behind it. So when you get an Apple II, and this is true of all of them until you get to the 2GS. So the original 2, the 2 Plus, the 2E, any variant of it. Not the 2C, by the way. You want to open it up to get the expansion, just pull it up. That's all it takes to get to the inside. You have 8 expansion slots in it. You hold the right side up, that would help. 0 through 8 is how they're numbered. That's another thing too, stupid little things like that. I'm not a computer engineer, I'm not an electrical engineer, I drive boats for a living. I'll think, oh, slot 1, yeah, no, slot 0. So when you're looking stuff, yeah, little things like that you might not think of. I'm sure I knew that back when I was 14, but I didn't remember it 30 years later. Power supplies are notorious for going bad because they're 30, 40-year-old power supplies. However, one of the nice things about them is 90% of the time when you get the magic smoke from you plug it in, turn on, and pop, and that lovely acrid smell comes wafting out of it, but you notice the machine is still running. Generally speaking, the first thing to go is one of these 2 rifle caps right here. Their sole purpose was for radio interference. I don't think the FCC is going to be driving by your house checking for radio interference from your Apple II. All you can do is just cut the little sucker right out. Some people replace them, some people don't. I have a number of machines running that don't have them. But you'd be surprised just how resilient these power supplies really are. Obviously, this is just the inside of the power supply. There is a company, one of the ones that's on the PDF that'll be on the flash drive I give you guys, Reactive Micro. They make a replacement one for this. Creatively enough, it's the universal power supply. But the thing that's great about it is it'll work in any Apple II power supply. It'll work in the Apple III power supply as well. It's really versatile. It's less than $100. I don't remember the exact price for it. I have like 5 different machines that are my regular ones I use for copying discs, or I use for testing software. testing, when I'm testing a machine, one of the most important things is you got to play games to test the joy works, because I have to test the joystick. So in my little thing here that says test, repair, there's a bunch of games, there are discs in there too. It's real easy to change them out, and Reactive even offers a service if you don't want to be bothered. If you're not a tech-involved person, you just want to play with it, you don't want to have to learn how to fix it and wire it. You ship them your power supply, they'll put it in for you and ship it back to you. So there's, like I said, a lot of really cool new stuff that's out there. And you put a new power supply in it, you're good for another 20, 30 years, you don't have to worry about it. So that's another really cool thing. My favorite tool on the planet next to the alcohol swabs is Oxidation. This stuff works on so many things that will help. The keyboards is the best example. You can take one of these keys, everything works but the return key, which means of course you can't do anything without the return key. And the space bar. Those are obviously the keys that we use the most, but the keys that die the fastest. A lot of times you can just pop the keycap off, and which, you know, when I pass this around, you can check it out, pull them off, and just take the deoxit, put the nozzle on it, put it right where the key stem comes in and out of the switch, and you'll see the key stem pops up and down. It's 4 corners. Stick it right next to it so it runs down into it. It'll last. Work the key a few times. You'd be surprised how many keyboards you could resurrect just with this. Another thing that works well on the keyboards is isopropyl alcohol. I use nothing. People say you could use anything from 91% and up. I only use 99% because 91% is great, but the other 9% is water. So I stick with 99%. It evaporates almost before you get it in sometimes to whatever you're cleaning. And that works good on the keyboard key stems as well. You just take one of these guys, dip it into the isopropyl with your finger on the end of it so it holds the liquid, put it right up against the edge of the key stem, let it go, let it drop in, work the key. That'll work too. But I find that Oxidation works the best. Does anybody recently any of you guys recently acquire an Apple II or an Apple IIe or something, or not too long ago?
2GS last year.
Okay, that doesn't count. No, seriously. No, actually, that's one of the only machines I didn't bring with me just because it's just different enough.
I never had one before. So.
Yeah, and I love the 2GS. The Apple IIs are my thing. I have other computers. I have a Coco. I have a Commodore 64. I use them to show people just how much better the Apple IIs are. But no, seriously, I like to use the other stuff, but these are my favorite machines, especially because of the fact that I can pop it open, I can plug all kinds of cool stuff into it. I had so much fun with that exhibit last year, just trying to track down. I never heard, what's a fast math card? I never heard, there's a math coprocessor for it. Stuff I never knew existed. I had Alpha Centauri keyboard hooked up with the Mountain music system hooked up to an amplifier. It was the coolest thing. Guy brings in his 10-year-old son who's taking piano lessons, starts banging away at John Lennon's song. That's what we were, Adam and I are both taking pictures of. That's what we were waiting for. There's so many things you can do with them even to today. Original Apple IIs are a little harder to come by. There was nobody knows exactly the number, but somewhere in the 60 to 80,000 of them were made before they switched to the 2 Plus. On the original Apple IIs, if you look at the serial, nobody's ever seen a serial number between 50,000 and 70-ish thousand. So it looks like there was a gap. They stopped at 40,000, somewhere in that range, just below 50. Switched, they come back, they're in the 60 to 80,000 range with a different kind of label on the bottom. There are also different revisions of Apple IIs. So when you look online and you're looking at eBay or something like that, or even on Craigslist where somebody's asking, sometimes they ask outrageous prices for stuff, but sometimes they're justified. There were only 6,000 revision O. The revisions are based on the motherboard revisions. There were only 6,000 revision O motherboards in existence. And revision 1, 2, 3, right on up the line that they came out with. And of the revision O boards, there was 2 different revisions of the revision O, I guess is the best way to put it. So the first 3,000-ish roughly are even more valuable because you can see they have a different color slot on them. See how these slots are dark? The actual, I'm hitting the microphone, sorry. The actual slots are dark color. The earliest revision O's are this real light green color. And you see one, you go, that's one of those. Then they came out with the Apple II Plus, and there were different revisions of the motherboard in the II Plus, but the thing that my favorite machine is the II Plus. Fell in between the original 2 and the Apple IIe, but it can do a little bit of both. With a 16K RAM upgrade on it, 16 voltec, you can actually run everything from integer basic to AppleSoft basic right on up through the first couple versions of ProDOS until it can no longer run those machines, or run those those operating systems. So they're versatile enough that if you want to play, my favorite thing, file stove, choplifter, load runner. As long as I can play those 3 games, I'm silent. I don't care what else I get. Another thing that Deoxit, by the way, I mentioned before, I forgot to say it before, works great on fixing joysticks. Joysticks or paddles, and you get it where it's real jumpy and it's real jittery. Oh yeah, open that sucker up, take those couple screws out that hold it together. Deoxit on the pot tongue, boy, they work great. A couple other things that I like to use is if you've ever got a machine and you first turn it on and the power supply works, and first thing you get on the screen, nothing but garbled text, if you get an image at all. Most of the things that will solve the problems in the machines do not require soldering, do not require doing, wire repair, trace repairs on the boards. Not that some of them don't, but the vast majority of machines, and Adam can attest to this, I have a lot. I mean, I probably have upwards of 40 or 50 Apple II Pluses right now, same thing with 2Es, half a dozen original Apple IIs. As we've been talking before the class started, I buy stuff to sell stuff so I can buy more stuff. Everything I've done at all my exhibits has always been paid for with other machines that I sold. And I usually get rid of most of the stuff, not all of it, much to my wife's chagrin, after a given exhibit, because that's what I like to do. I always have a couple machines that are forever in my collection at home. A couple Next machines, a couple Apple IIs, a 2 Plus, a 2A, a 2GS that I have hooked up all the time. But my goal is, I'm going to do an exhibit. One year was Attack of the Clones. So I spent 8 months finding all different kinds of cool Apple II clones. When it was over, the day after VCF, it was starting to get ready to sell them because I already knew what I wanted to do next year, but I had to pay for it. So I paid for it by selling the stuff that I didn't want to keep. There's a couple clones in my collection now that I'll keep. There was a Province that was a Bulgarian clone that has a little, first of all, it's dual processor, it has a 6502 like the Apple IIs do, and it also has a Z80 processor on the board. I couldn't figure out how to switch it. It doesn't want to auto boot to CPM, and there's dip switches right on the motherboard, but the only copy of the manual I could find online is in Bulgarian. But it was really cool though, because it had a switch on the keyboard, under the keyboard, that you could type it in regular English characters and flip the switch and you were typing in Cyrillic characters. That machine stayed with me. It's really cool, 80s, like Soviet era, big, bulky, really cool looking. So you could, I know people that do, they collect for all kinds of reasons. Everybody has different reasons, but the worst part is you get the toy and the damn thing doesn't work. A lot of times the only problem is the chips need to be reseated. You'll be surprised how many times you'll get a machine, you'll open it up, and you'll start, just push down on it. Just push, and also you hear pop, pop, pop. They just, from heat, cold, expansion, contraction, they work their way loose. You also get oxidation on the chips, especially the way some of these things were stored over the decades. You can literally see them, they were in somebody's garage for 30 years, and the garage wasn't needed. You pop the chip out, pop the chip back in. A lot of times just reseating all of the chips can make a non-functioning machine function. Another little tidbit, if you're trying to figure out, you got everything's working, except for I keep getting random characters on the screen. The machine functions, but random characters, bad memory. You might get no video. You hear the beep, you see the light come on the keyboard, but you're not getting any video on the screen. Well, on the Apple II, all of the Apple IIs, the first bank of RAM, again, I'm holding it upside down, I apologize. Your first 16K, your second 16K, your third 16K. So if it's fully populated, you got 48K motherboard, RAM on the motherboard. This first row of RAM is also used for video generation. So if there's any bad RAM chip in this first row of RAM, you can have video issues, from no video at all to random characters popping up on the screen and everything in between. You also only need RAM in this row in order for the machine to function. But you have to have RAM in this row for it to function. You can have the other 2 banks fully populated, but if there's no RAM or bad RAM in this one, your machine's not working. But that's how it addresses the RAM. It starts at this bank and works its way up. The only thing you need to get this machine apart, I showed you guys how to pop the lid off, which wasn't really technical, is a Phillips head screwdriver. There's 6 screws on the flat part of the base pan. See that? Get that microphone again. One here, one here, one here. Same thing down this side, and then 4 underneath the keyboard. That's all you need to get it apart. I took most of them out before you guys got here. So I'm going to take these last 2 screws or 3 screws that were holding it together. If I can get them out, I should have done this before you guys came and put them back in, because some of these were really hard to get out. But this is the first time this machine has been opened in decades. It was a friend of ours ours from VCF who died, and this was one of his machines. So once you get it open, you got to remember one thing before you pull the case off, because there's a keyboard attached in there. And the keyboard is attached to the case, not the base plate. But the cable from the keyboard goes to the motherboard on the base plate. So if you just go to pull it off, you're going to rip that keyboard cable out, and there's no way you can do it without bending every one of those 16 pins that goes into it. Trust me, I've done it. I didn't do it on purpose, but I did it. So now, and you did not need my Diet Coke in the picture.
I cropped it.
Oh, that's good. Perfect. So if I pull the case off, did I miss? Oh. This one has an RF shield in the back. This was a later model Apple II Plus. That's this silver guy you see here. I think I would have noticed that. It just pops off. It's a pain in the neck, but it pops off. It's just literally bent over the back of the case. You can pop them off. This one's always the hardest. I don't know why. Now the case is off. But when I go to pull the case off, you'll see there's the keyboard cable attached. So when you take this off, you want my next favorite tool, chip puller. These are good for anything from basically 4-pin up to 24-pin. If you have any bigger chips like the CPU, you don't want to pull it out with one of these. You want to use a puller that's designed for 24 to 40-pin. There's a link to one on here, an example of one on the PDF that's on the flash drive I'm going to give you guys, just to show you what I mean. You got to be really careful with the big chips, which in the Apple II is only the CPU really. The ROMs are a little bigger, but they're still easy to pop out. Another good way I'll show you in a minute is like the CPU, flathead screwdriver. Sometimes you can leave it on the chip next to it. Usually I'll take like a little plastic spudger, like a spudger tool, lay it this way and lever it. Lever one side up, go to the other side of the CPU, lever it up. There's again, no way to pull it out with one of these without bending half the pins on the damn thing. So first what I'm going to do is lift the case up just enough so I can get the keyboard out. Because again, I don't want to bend the damn thing. It's hooked on the speaker wire. There you go. Now, when I pass this around, my thinking behind this was, last night, from 12 minutes after 11 until 25 after 11, I used nothing but alcohol swabs. These guys are great for cleaning. They're 70% alcohol, so don't use them on anything that has power to it. You want to be careful. They're the same ones that everyone has had every time you get a shot. This is what they use. They are fantastic. They're cheap. You can buy them by the thousands for literally pennies a piece. They are awesome for not just cleaning the cases in general, but on these machines in particular, right here, that's where your hand rested. Right here, that's where your hand rested. And then hit the keyboard. You will get the nastiest, gunkiest, the finger oils that you get on and stuff. It comes right off with them. Clean them with the alcohol pads. You'll see it looks like it just smears it all around. Spray a little Windex, never onto the machine, always onto the paper towel. And I know it sounds stupid, but I figured all this shit out the hard way. I'll tell you right up front. If there was a mistake you're going to make on one of these, I've done it twice already. And then wipe it off. So as you pass this around, I never only cleaned half a keyboard before, so literally I used alcohol swabs, Windex, paper towels, a brush. That's all I used. And you can see the difference on the right half of the case versus the left. So this is the before, this was the after. It wasn't the dirtiest machine I had, but it was close. I said, that was 13 minutes with just those three things. If you actually spent time on it, in 45 minutes, an hour, you can have some of the nastiest looking machines literally looking like they were almost brand new. You'd also be surprised how many things that look like scratches in those painted cases, yet you hit them with the alcohol. What it really was just not a deep scratch, and they'll almost disappear, which I never thought they would, but you'd really be surprised how much you can fix it up. Only the real deep gouges, there's not much you can do about it. You can color match the paint. There's people that have come up with different Pantones and stuff that will work. The hard part is that the cases are textured. And if you look at it close, you can see there's just these fine little bumps on it. So when you try to repaint a case, you almost always lose that texture, and then it gets that flat, shiny look, and it just doesn't look quite the the machines I brought home one time, my son goes, wow, that one's going to be really valuable. It was an Apple II, a generic run-of-the-mill Apple IIe that somebody was giving away. So why is that one valuable? He goes, oh, because it comes with the original dirt included. I mean, it literally looked like you had just dug it out of the ground. So you'd be surprised just how bad some of them will be. Another thing that's really cool to have, cleaning disc. Yes, I take disk drives apart all the time and clean the heads with, usually what I do is just a Q-tip. This is your other best friend right here is a Q-tip. There's nothing technical here, by the way. This is all really straightforward stuff, but it's all the crap that works. And 99% isopropyl. There's always a little dirt, especially a lot of times there's bits and pieces and mold coming off the actual floppy disk. But these are so nice that you don't have to take the disk drive apart just to see if the disk works. You put it in, throw one of these guys in, you just take it, a few drops. They used to come with cleaner. It's isopropyl. A few drops of isopropyl on it, stick the disk in, turn the machine on. If the disk boots in the first place, it'll just keep spinning because it's never going to find anything to boot from. That's all you got to do. You'd be surprised how many times that, this thing doesn't work, and all you needed was this and a few drops of alcohol to actually get the disk drive working. And again, taking it apart and cleaning it the right way is what you eventually want to do. But if you just wanted to turn the damn thing on to see if it worked, and you think, oh shit, either the disk is bad or the drive is bad, or it could have just been dirty. A lot of times that's the case. I had mentioned before about a lot of times the chips want to work their way loose. If you're done with that already, you got it. I know it wasn't the best cleaning job, but it got the point across that what you can do in less than 15 minutes to make a difference cleaning it up. I have no idea if the keyboard works, by the way. I've never even turned this machine on. All its sole purpose was, ooh, it's dirty, I'm going to keep it for my class. When you're, excuse me, when you're working with these things, one of the things to keep in mind is the chips like to work their way loose, they get oxidized, so ideally what you want to do is remove all of the chips and reseat them. Again, sometimes just pushing down on them will be enough, but if the machine is still giving you, it's still acting up, again, it might be random characters on the screen, might be vertical stripes, there's all kinds of funky things that they will do if they're not working properly. The next thing I tell people to do is reseat all the chips. Pull every chip out, put every chip back in. Because sometimes the chip will be tight, it didn't move, it didn't budge, I just popped it just now, I can hear it pop, you can hear them when I push on them. That's not the motherboard, that's the chip. I'll tell people, it might feel like it's in tight, but if it's oxidized all the way around those pins, pull it out, push it back in, that's going to break the oxidation, and a lot of times the chip is still perfectly good. Another little tidbit for finding out when the machine's not working and you're trying to figure out, I tried this, I changed this, what the heck is going on? Leave the machine turned on with power, be careful, put your fingers on the chips. A bad RAM chip will burn your finger really, really good. It's amazing how much, there's cool adapter. I know one guy has the little camera adapter for his iPhone that's a thermal imager. You don't have to go that far, your fingers work really good too. But you'd be surprised how many times when a chip goes bad, you can feel it. You also, wow, why the hell is that one so hot? Because it's broken, that's why. Be really careful when you take the chips out to put them back in the right way. I did not bring it with me, but I have a picture that I put up on all the different groups I belong to of a little, I think it's an LS150, the 74 LS159, that I didn't put it in, but when I got the machine and I checked everything, it was all, I didn't look that closely, and somebody had put a non-RAM chip in a RAM socket. Yeah, when I turned that sucker on, it wasn't just a pop, it was an actual flame that shot right out the top. It was only for a fraction of a second, but scared the hell out of me. And there's a hole that you could basically fit like a decent number 2 pencil point right down into the chip. It just blew the sucker right apart. And they will do that too if you reverse them sometimes, because depending on where it is, has different current going to different pins on it. And if you put current to the wrong pin, it's going to be, it'll wake you up if you were wondering. But another thing that I like to do too is it's just little standoffs that hold the motherboard on here. Some boards are different. There are a lot of the later Apple II Pluses, there will be, or the earlier ones, excuse me, there'll be instead of a post here, instead of a motherboard standoff, it'll actually be a little bolt with a nut that holds it on. But most of them are just, that's what these screws on the bottom here are. Those are holding the standoffs in. Take the motherboard right off the base plate, and then you can get a real good cleaning job on the base plate, you can get a real good cleaning job on the motherboard. You can wash boards. It depends on how much you want to do for restoration. How deep you want to go. If you've got a machine that other than dirt, it's in really good shape, you say, you know what, This thing is like museum quality. Take it all apart, take every chip out, pull everything out. You can wash the boards. A couple things to remember though. I told you how much I like isopropyl alcohol, and I told you how much I like the alcohol wipes. They are perfect for everything except for two things. The little power, which this machine does not have, I apologize. The little power key, it's not a key, light on the machine. It goes right here, over the light bulb. It's a little white square that has the word power on it. Until you wipe it with an alcohol swab, and then it's just a white square. Yeah, learned that one the hard way too. And the same thing with, it'll be very hard for you to see, there's a date code in the upper left-hand corner of the motherboard. That also doesn't stay if you wipe it with alcohol. So just keep that in mind. If you don't care, then it doesn't matter. But when you've got I hate to tell the story because I was so stupid. You've got a nice revision 1 motherboard that's still the sequential number. Before they went to date codes, they were just sequential numbers. And it was 6,117, or at least it used to be 6,117 until I cleaned it. Yeah, that was how I found out that those are just ink stamps. Yeah, don't do that. So at any rate, something to keep in mind. But other than that, the alcohol really can't hurt anything. I mean, I douse entire boards with isopropyl alcohol. Guys put them in the dishwasher on a low temp cycle. Only thing you do is you're going to use water. I've hosed them down before because they were literally so bad I couldn't clean it no matter what I did. I literally had to resort to water and scrubbing it. Just keep in mind, don't take it out and dry it off. Don't even take an air compressor and blow the air out and then hook it up. Let it sit for 2 days. Even after you've done all of the things to dry it. Don't put it in the dryer. Don't put it in the oven. Yes, I know people that have done all of these things. A hair dryer is great. Compressed air is great. Get all the heavy water off. Let it sit for at least 24 hours, if not 48. Because if there is one droplet of water in between one socket and the motherboard and you put power to it, you just fried it. So just keep that in mind. It's worth waiting an extra day. When you think it's dry, wait another day, just to be safe. Yes?
Just clean with alcohol.
Oh yeah, like I said, I've doused them in isopropyl. I buy these by the case from Uline. So.
Is it okay to soak in alcohol?
Oh, absolutely. Yep. Matter of fact, when Corey Cohen, who's part of our group, does all the Apple One, he's the Apple One guy. When you've seen some of these different Apple Ones that have sold around the world, and they flew an expert, Corey. That's who they fly out. He has a solution that he puts them in, an alcohol solution that he puts them in, and a vibrator shaker to shake the sediment and stuff loose from. So yeah, you can do anything like that. Just again, keep in mind, if it's got a date code on it, it won't after you've doused it in alcohol.
That's why I asked, and I have when I did that, but the date code's still there.
Depends on what ink they use too. I've seen late stamps where it stayed on. I've seen other ones where it was the handwritten, like almost looks like a marker. Son of a bitch came right off. It all just depends. Also depends on if you wipe it or not. If you just pour it over it, it might last. It might fade a little, but if you use the alcohol swabs to clean it, that's not going to work. So keep that in mind too. Yeah, they're all different. They've done so many different things on these boards and so many different revisions, and you see so many changes. I mean, they had 0 through 4, and they had A, B, C, or C, D, RFI, 7. There's at least 9 different board revisions, and then it doesn't count the Apple IIe. I'm just talking 2 and 2 Plus. That you'd be amazed how many different things they must have tried. See if this one works. See if that process works better. Or they get a new tooling machine, so they put it through this one, and that uses a stamp that rolls it on, as opposed to somebody that wrote so many different ways. But in general, the date stamps and the power key especially do not like alcohol. It's just like when you're retro writing. I don't actually like to use the retro write. If anybody again doesn't know retro writing, it's to get the yellowness out of the ABS plastics of the later machines. If I have a machine that I do it to, which I rarely do, usually it's because it's just got one really funky stain. Oh, that looks like garbage. If it's yellow, I don't care if it's yellow. It was yellow when I was still using it 30 years ago after the first couple of years I had it. But some people want to get them right back to their original color. Is the volume cream developer. It's basically, you get it right from salon care places. 40 is the number that I use for it. But I'm not big on retro bright just because that's not my thing. I don't care if it's yellow. I just want it to be clean and work is all I care about. The next guy will be like, man, this thing, look at how perfect. And I'll look at it and go, wow, that looks really nice. You should retro bright that one. Yeah, as long as it works, that's all I care about. Everybody's different with that. Another great tool to have, parts picker. These things are great because there's a lot of little screws and stuff in these suckers, and even the chips. And sometimes when you're just checking a machine out and I'm swapping ROMs out. I don't have to take the whole case and the keyboard off. I just pop the lid off. And then I drop the one little 555 timer chip that's only about 1/4 inch in size, and it falls right down in between the slots. My fingers do not fit in between those slots up there, but this guy works great. Just push, I'm sure you've seen it before. Push on it, and 3 little claws come out to grab it. They are awesome for picking up those small parts. Another good tool to have is small needle nose pliers, because when you pull all those chips out and reseat them to get your computer working, if you never bend a pin on a single chip when you do that, you are a better man than I am, because as careful as I still bend pins on the chips from time to time. But one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to use your fingers to straighten the pin, at least not fingers like mine, because you will inevitably break them. It is amazing if I can get this guy out. I can't get this one out. I'll pick one that's a little easier next time. When these pins break, you can fix a chip, but most of these chips are still fairly easy to attain. Integer ROMs are very difficult to get. Applesoft ROMs a little bit easier to get. 6502s, they're a dime a dozen. That's another thing that's on the PDF, that's on the flash drive that I'm going to give you guys, is links to the ones I use the most: Janeco, DigiKey, Unicorn, and I think there was one other one, are the electronics places that if you're looking for I need a 74LS 129, yeah, they probably have them. But you do not want to try and bend the pin back with your fingers. You want to, when a pin is bent over, there's no real good way for me to show you guys this. And yes, I know I'm going to bend a pin on purpose, but that's all right, because 4116s I have by the gross. So the pin is bent up in the air, and everybody wants to just do this to push it back. You can do it, but inevitably you're going to break it. You don't just grab it where it's bent. You don't grab it halfway up the pin and bend it. You grab it all the way up to where it connects to the actual silicone itself, and then first straighten it just by squeezing it down. Then take the whole pin and bend it in, because where it connects is 3 times as thick as the rest of the leg of the pin itself, and it will save you a lot of, all right, I just broke a pin. Now, and you don't have one, how many people keep these hanging around their house? Well, I do, but not when it's a new machine, something you just got, and now you're going to have to order one and wait for it. That's why when I sell machines, I always put at least like 10 discs. Some utilities discs, some game discs, or just random stuff that I throw in, because there's nothing worse than getting a new toy when you can't play with the damn thing. So that's one of the things I always make sure I do, is have stuff that you can play with. Another great thing, if you really want to get down to the nitty-gritty with restoration, if you've ever taken apart, there's some right on this one I'm looking at right here. Sometimes the chips don't get that white oxidation. It almost looks like a black tarry. I know it's another form of it, but it's not what I was accustomed to. Again, I work on the water and boats. I know how galvanized steel, aluminum, how it all oxidizes. This was different, and I'm going to show you one of these because this is a perfect chip for it. I'll pass it around to you guys. If I can get it out without breaking it. Starting to get a little bit of that tarnish on there if you pass it around. And you have, I've seen ones that are literally almost black on the entire length of the pin. And you want to try and clean them up. There's a couple different ways you can try, but one thing that I have found works really well, you just got to be careful with it, is a fiberglass pencil. All it is little, I'll show you the inserts here. They give you replacement tips. It's kind of like a mechanical pencil, only instead of lead to write with, it's a little tube of fiberglass, or I should say a little column of fiberglass. And it works just like mechanical pencils do. Push it out, you can change it out. Take the chip, make sure you put something behind the legs. Your finger will usually fit in between the real tiny guys. So you want to take something plastic, lay it in between the legs of the chip, and then just clean it. That's all you do. You can be real gentle on it. You don't have to worry about bending it. And you don't want to go too hard, of course, but yeah, it's a great way to clean the legs off on it, especially if it's a chip on a machine that is difficult to come, an integer ROM on an original Apple II. First of all, as I said earlier, they didn't make a lot of them. There was less than 80,000 of those machines were ever produced. A lot of them don't exist anymore simply because the first ones came out in 1977, and like a lot of people did, when it was old, they threw it away. I know that I found out later one man's trash is another man's treasure, but I didn't realize it. So I think about some of the things I got rid of and go, oh, I can't believe I got rid of that. And not got rid of it, sold it, not got rid of it, gave it to a friend, just went, how wants this? Threw it away. Yeah, too many things that I cringe when I think about some of the stuff I did that with 30 years ago. But you want to keep in mind that when it's a chip that is something like an integer ROM that's hard to get, it is worth spending a little time on it. Sometimes you get lucky and you find one cheap, but they're 40 to 50 bucks a ROM. You know, you could literally spend 150 bucks to 200 bucks just to replace the 4 ROMs on the machine because they're just hard to come by. Let me think if there was anything else that I wanted to specifically point out to you guys. No, that was the main stuff. Like I said, your main tools, Phillips head screwdriver, pliers. Yes, sir. No, I can't answer that. Sorry. No, I'm just kidding.
What's your opinion on Tarnex? Using that, I had something with like black. I mean, there was something.
Yeah, you know, I never tried it, but I know people have, but I've never actually tried to use it before. I always thought about what was the one that they used to show where they took the penny and they dipped it in?
Tarnex.
That's Tarnex. Okay, yeah, I've never tried. It's the one commercial I remember. They did a good job with that commercial because I still remember it. But I've never tried it. But to be honest with you, again, for me, it was if it's working, I don't go deeper than that. I wasn't worried about a machine. I mean, I've restored machines for other people, or I've had 2 Revision-O Apple IIs in my life. The first one was mine from childhood. The second one was one that I picked up on for a song and dance on the Craigslist buy a number of years ago. Those 2 machines paid for almost everything I've done for the last 3 or 4 years. Literally, have. I wouldn't have been able to do my first 2 exhibits that I did for VCF if it wasn't for that. And you know, some guys, I know, and this is going to be on video and eventually on the internet and preserved for all time. And how could you sell a Revision-O, let alone 2 Revision-Os? Because that's not me. For me, I want to have an Apple II. I don't care which one it is as long as I have one. Somebody else wants to have that one. Cool. I mean, they're all valid reasons to want one and have one. But for me, I just want to have one. I couldn't care less which one it is. But that one Revision, it wasn't actually mine. It was my older brother's. Father bought it for him in 1978. He's 9 years older than me. I was 10. He was 19. He went to college that fall. It became my computer. And the rest was history. I mean, I literally had that machine up until about 5 years ago. And when I found out what those machines were worth, especially with serial number 3283, the one I got second time was serial number 2006. And I'll make you even more jealous. Corey, that I told you is the Apple I guy, he's got one that has a 2-digit serial number that still has the solid case with no vents in it. If you don't know what I'm talking about, most Apple II cases look like this with these vents along the side. The earliest ones had no vents. The very earliest ones, you can see the file marks from where they were chiseling out the spot for the keyboard light and for the reset key and that kind of stuff. Not a lot of them were made to begin with. Nobody knows the exact number. Some people have said less than 500, some have said less than 300, the ventless cases. But even a lot of them didn't survive because the heat problem with no vents, so they melted, literally melted. So yeah, there's some really cool, very rare machines out there. But again, for me, that one Apple II, when I got, my attachment again wasn't, oh, that was my machine from childhood. It was really cool, but then it was, but now I do this, and this, and this, and this, and this. And I literally bought 15, 20 different things just in the first month that went, now I know what I'm going to do for my exhibit. So again, everybody's different, but when you're going through these machines and you're looking at the different ones, if you don't know, this looks different from what I'm used to seeing, what is it? There's so much information out on the web now. And like I said, a lot of the links for a lot of the places I use, a lot of the sites I use, are all going to be on the flash drive, which while I'm thinking of it, what do I got, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, a dozen of you? I made these up ahead of time because otherwise there was no way I was getting it done the last 2 days while we've been setting up. And I am going to hire you to hand these out just because you're there and you're in front. I got 10 there. A couple more. If you would, keep one for yourself. Just a little 1 gig flash drive. I'm going to show you real quick because I think we got, what, about 15 minutes left before I'm supposed to stop talking, which is a difficult thing for me to do. Let's see. Oh, here's another one. I forgot. I'm glad I thought of this. When you first get that computer, the Apple II computer, and you don't have a disk drive, or you have a disk drive and you don't have any disks, if you have, there's one really cool, it was one of the first websites I found when I started jumping back into this about 6 years ago. If you have any form of MP3 player or phone that has a headphone jack, or an adapter for the new ones that don't have headphone jacks anymore. You can get, there are thousands of, you got it, those are the guys. Yeah, the ones with red are from my other class, the Mac class. So, where it has all these disk images that were put into audio files. So I'm going to open that one just to show you. Where did I put it? Right here. Call it creatively enough, ASCIIExpress.net. I'm not connected to the internet. See, that's why you got to check this stuff ahead of time. Somebody yell for Adam, it's his PC, we'll check it out. At any rate, when you go there, they're MP3 files. And you download them to your phone, and the only other thing you need, I did not bring one with me, is an eighth-inch mini plug to eighth-inch mini plug. I forget what the other, that's what I call them. I know there's a millimeter. Well, we live in America, obviously. Is it 5 millimeter? There you go. That's all you need.
Is it 5 or 3.5?
3.5.
I think it's 3.5, yeah.
Right.
So you go from the audio jack on your phone to the cassette input port on the back of the machine here. Type load on the computer. Hit play on your phone. When it's done load, you'll get a beep when it starts load. You'll get 2 beeps from the machine when it's done load. Type run, you're playing. I mean, it's so cool. And I think they're up to 1,500 or 1,600 different programs that you have discs that you can download for it. So it's a really great way to get started, because it might take a little longer to get floppy disks. It might take a little longer to get stuff that disk drives that work, but you can find one of those damn audio cables almost anywhere. And everybody's got something that has a headphone jack on it. A laptop, a tablet, any of those things will work, and it's a great way. At my VCF exhibit last year, I told some of you guys that heard me, I said I did the expandable Apple. And the first 2 machines I had set up, which were a Rev 1 and a Rev 2 Apple II, I made them period correct, just because it was fun. Mainly because the first machine, which that was a late 77, early 78 machine, there were only 4 cards you could buy for it. 3 of them came from Apple. By the second year, the Rev 2 that I had, there was about, I think I had 5 or 6 cards in it, and there were all kinds of stuff. And then every machine after that was, check out all the cool stuff. It had nothing to do with period correct or time frames or date stamps or any of that kind of stuff. But those first 2 machines, one of the things I had was they came out, Apple's one of their first cards was the Apple Parallel card for printers, the Apple Communications card, which was at that time mostly for teletypes or acoustical couplers, which I had one of them hooked up to that machine. But to test the Apple Communication card, Woz wrote his own version of Palm, and they called it Telepalm. And they hooked 2 machines up with a cable between the 2 communication cards, and you play Palm against each other. So I had those machines set up running Telepalm. And I didn't have the cassette of it, but I had it on my phone on the audio file that I got, that I downloaded from the internet, and plugged it. It was the coolest thing, because I was like, oh, I forgot I can do that. I was so pissed that I forgot to bring it with me. And having so much stuff I had brought from home. And I logged in, downloaded it, boom, I was done. So yeah, there's a lot of research. I'm not going to, since we're almost done here, I'm not going to worry about logging into the Wi-Fi, but you get my point that there's so many resources out there. And real quick, I'll go through a couple of them here. Let me go back to where I was. And then I'll get my big head out of your way.
By the way, that same audio coupling technique works for a bunch of British computers as well. Cassettes were huge over there.
Oh yeah? The only British one I have is I have an ITT-20 Apple II clone. But that's the only one I have. So when you're looking through this stuff, you'll see like Apple II Online is a great site for, they not only have disk images that you can download, as I mentioned, there's a lot of disk emulators out there, modern disk emulators. Also they have a ton of books and manuals that have been digitized. They're everywhere on the internet, but Apple II Online, when their massive list of third-party manuals, Apple books and manuals, etc., they also put a little red heart next to the ones that are real high-resolution scans, which are great. I use an original, refurbished 16-gig iPad that is not good for anything anymore, except for it has all 16 gigs filled with resource material. I like the books, I like the binders, I love having the real stuff in front of me, but sometimes I just can't. So you get one of those bed nightstands, you know, the telescoping ones that are supposed to hold your tablet so you can read, and it sits right on the right-hand side of my workbench. And when I want to pull up the Apple Level 2 diagnostic paper, pull it right up on the screen because I got the board and chips and everything scattered all over my workbench. It's so nice to look at it. And that is one thing I will show you when I close this. Just as one last thing, and then we will be done. Yes, I want to close all. Why does it have to ask me?
Because it's Windows.
Yeah, right. Let me go. There's the level 1. By the way, one of the things, there's a ton of PDF. I almost filled, I thought I had a box of 2 gig flash drives, and I didn't. I only had a box of 1 gig. So half the stuff I put on in the folder to put on there, I had to take off so I could fill these up. But there's tons of PDFs on here, but this one folder says Apple Level 1 Technical Procedures. I have the real binders. They were binders, big, thick. They're 400 to 600 page binders. If there's a symptom of your machine, chances are it's listed in there with some of the likely causes. But just this one PDF right here, which was actually the Apple Level 2 service notes. Let me open it up here. Just to give you an example of the kind of stuff that's on there. I'm going to skip past this. When you get to this page right here, all right, symptom, random characters or keyboard reset. Check the 11 or the jumper block at F1. That is what this one, like 4 or 5 page PDF, I have used more than so many other things. Because what it is a list of symptoms and likely causes. And it is so handy. You get to here. I had mentioned this actually before. Horizontal lines and jump characters. Check the 74 LS1, 74 B5. That's what this is. And sometimes that's all it is. You'll look at it. I have a guy that just got an early revision Apple II that called me up and said, what? This is what it's doing. What do you think? He said, it's one of these 4 chips or something really nefarious that I have no clue. Third chip he checked are the ones that was what it is. How'd you figure that out? This PDF right here. That was how I figured it out. So yeah, this one document, if nothing else, is so helpful in diagnosing problems. And if nothing else, it will eliminate, don't waste your time removing every other chip on the damn board. Start looking for cracked traces or something on the board because it's a great resource. And there's tons of that stuff on the flash drives that I gave you guys. So I think we'll end it there. We're just about at 10:30. It's 20 after. You want questions? We got 10 minutes. Bueller, anyone?
I have a soft-cover Apple II repair manual. Would that likely be the same content as some of these PDFs, or?
Oh yeah, a lot of this stuff is. There's a few books which I put some of those PDFs on here as well. There was, I think it was Sam's How to Repair Your Apple II or Apple II. I think I've got that one on here. I've got a whole bunch of them on there. Oh yeah, they're definitely the way to go. But if you took, did everybody get one of the flash drives, by the way? Kelly, Wallen? Yeah. You got it. I'll show you that one. Let me go back here. Put a bunch of them in here too. I had to mark them with a red marker because I've got a bunch for my Mac class and a bunch for my Apple II class, and I didn't want to give the wrong ones. I'd give you the Mac ones, but I don't know how many people are going to show up. I only have 25 of each of them with me. If you go to, I even put some game manuals on there because I had to put Choplifter on there. The one I used to test it. I didn't put a lot of, there might be a handful of disk images on there, but if you don't have any way to use an SD reader or something like that, the disk images won't really help you at this stage of the game. But the links to all the places that I get the disk images from are on there as well. If you're not already familiar with the Asimov archive, it's, I forget how many gigs of disk images and manuals and all that kind of stuff. Let me see. Oh, like third-party peripherals, I made a folder up. So there is VidX manuals on here. I put ones for some of the common RAM expansion cards that you can get. I know I put, like I said, a couple of the books in there too. Oh, Apple II and II Plus specific. I broke it down by 2C and 2.8. I put a whole understanding the Apple II, the AppleSoft tutorial, all this, so I put a ton of them in there. Yes, sir.
When doing retro computing, everyone wants to go for what they used when they were kids. So
Right.
I was a Franklin Ace guy.
Okay.
So any pluses or minuses or words of wisdom, I have not started working on.
Yeah, when you buy a Franklin Ace 1000, the keyboard will not work.
They didn't work when
It
they
just
started.
won't work.
Yeah, it's okay.
It absolutely won't work. 3 years ago, when I did my Attack of the Clones, I don't remember the gentleman's name. Perhaps you do, Kelly, or that's part of our group that used to work at Franklin.
I'm drawing a blank, but yeah.
Came over and said, oh yeah,
Bob Applegate.
I helped this out. What's that?
Bob Applegate, I think it was.
You're right. Yep, that's who it was. I apologize for not remembering your name, Bob. If watch this. And he said, yeah, he goes, don't blame me for the keyboard. Or words to that effect. It was so funny. Yeah, I have a handful of Franklins.
I believe it's actually his words were, not it.
Yeah, right, right. No, it's just, it's one of those things. Those keyboards just don't work. I've never repaired one. I believe they're similar to the ones that have a little foil for the foam pads.
Just like the TRS-80 Model 16.
That was what I was waiting for, was somebody to give me an example. I knew there were other ones that have similar situations, but I've never repaired one myself because I had 3 and one keyboard worked, so that's the one I use.
I used
But,
to do,
I mean,
I used to
eventually
do
I'll
a
fix it.
repair depot for A1000s and 1100s and 1200s, so replaced a lot of keyboards.
Yeah, there's so many. You know what? One of my favorite machines to use is a laser 128.
There you go.
They're the fastest.
They're so nice. I always have one around. It's roughly an Apple IIc form factor if you've never seen one before, but it's just better. It just was. And it's also the only, I'll say, authorized clone, other than you can't count the Bell & Howell as a clone. I still had one in my clone display because they're cool, but it's not really a clone because it was manufactured by Apple. But the VTech, the Laser 128, is the only, quote, authorized clone because Apple lost their court case against them.
It's legal. It's definitely not.
Right, it wasn't authorized, but it is legitimate if you want to put it that way. Yeah, some pretty cool stuff out there. Any other questions? Anybody have any?
I had a question.
Yes, sir.
The plastic tabs that are on, that hold the cover on,
Right.
how do you glue those back?
Me personally, I use 2-part epoxy.
Okay.
Gorilla makes a good one too,
Okay.
but that's what I use, 2-part epoxy.
Because usually when you buy.
What
them,
you're talking about these guys.
Yeah.
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 Which they are also still right now on this later one. You can see it's riveted in, as it is on the early ones were not. They were just adhesive backing, and none of the adhesive works anymore. So yeah, that's what I use on the ones like that. Is I use 2-part epoxy. That's another thing that's real important. Real quick before we're done, the badges. I don't know if you guys noticed when I passed this around, but I cleaned around half the badge and not the other. That was just with my finger and an alcohol pad. Usually I use a plastic spudger to really get in there. But a lot of times these guys will pop off. I could probably pull this one off right now if I wanted to. I've used epoxy to put them back on. I usually just use contact cement. Elmer's makes a good one.
Enough surface area, it'll stick.
Yeah, and it was something barely more than that was used on the original ones. But contact cement is also great for those original discs you have and the label comes off. Works perfect to hold them back on there. If you care about those kinds of things, it's a great way to fix it. So yeah, one more tool, like I mentioned earlier, you have to have, this is all my different repair discs, because I like to use the real thing, even though I use the disc emulators. But if you're going to disk recovery program, that kind of stuff, yeah, Castle Wolfenstein is one of my main test discs. Yeah. And my wife would come in, so you're playing games against? I'm testing.
Testing.
I got to make sure the joystick works, the keyboard works, the computer works. But actually, and all fun aside, hard hat Mac. Hard hat Mac, when I'm done with the machine and I want to do a burn-in test, I run hard hat because it's got a great 3 or 4 different screen demo that just runs perpetually. Turn the machine on, go to breakfast, go to lunch, go to dinner, I come back, it's still running, I know the machine's good. That's the one I use for my burn-in test. And that's it. I think we're done. 9:30 or 10:30.